friends, welcome to your March 4-H Club meeting. We're going to be focused on those tiny little organisms that you can't see with your naked eye, but are literally everywhere. That's right, microorganisms. But before we get started, let's go ahead and perform the 4-H pledge. So remember, of course, the 4-H's are head, heart, hands, and health. You can feel free to do the pledge along with me. Okay, we're going to start in 3, 2, 1. I pledge my head to clearer thinking, my heart to greater loyalty, my hands to larger service, and my health to better living. For my club, my community, my country, and my world. Now let's move on to some of our upcoming events. So remember, y'all are all 4-Hers. Every single one of y'all is invited to all of our 4-H events. But we do need to know if you are coming, just so that we can ensure that we have enough space and materials for everyone. So coming up first on March 17th, which is St. Patrick's Day, is our Clover Kids meeting. This is for kids in the 4th and 5th grade. It's going to be held at our 4-H office from 3 to 5 p.m. We are going to, since it is St. Patrick's Day, going to focus on green themed things. Maybe we'll even catch one of those pesky little leprechauns. You never know. And our next club is going to be on Monday, March 22nd, also at the 4-H office. This is going to be our garden club. So we're going to get dirty, learn how to grow our own crops. It's be from 4 to 6 p.m. and this will be outdoors. And this is awesome because it is Georgia Agricultural Awareness Week. So we'll be able to celebrate that as well. And finally, on Saturday, March 20th, we are partnering with Keep Golden Isles Beautiful for a marsh pickup. This again will be outdoors, and it's going to be at the north side of the Sidney Lanier Bridge at Liberty Park. So we're going to help keep some of the trash out of our waterways, like our marshes and oceans, so you can be eco-heroes with us. All right, so remember, we are organisms, but we are multicellular. So we have cells that make up tissues, that make up organs, that make up organ systems, that turn into an organism. But today we're talking about little guys that are just a single cell. So they have to do all of the things that we do, but just as one single little cell. So today we're going to focus on bacteria, viruses, protozoa, and fungi. And we're going to start with one that we can kind of relate to. Just based on its name, protozoan, proto meaning first and zoan meaning animal. This is like a sort of animal. So it's a single-celled organism that kind of acts like an animal. And if we compare it to an animal cell, we'll see it has a cell membrane and it has organelles like a nucleus. So remember, cells, they're made of organelles. We see a lot of these in soil, in water too. So they come in a lot of different shapes. You'll see that the amoeba just pushes its cytoplasm against its cell membrane to make something called a pseudopod that it kind of uses like a fake leg, pseudopod. The paramecium uses tiny little cilia, tiny little hairs to move around. The euglena, which has chlorophyll in it, so it's like kind of like an animal, kind of like a plant. It actually moves around with this tail that it whips called a flagella. Then we have this guy called the apicomplexan, and it is a protozoan that causes the disease malaria. And it moves around by oozing into your blood cells. It gets from person to person through a vector we call a mosquito. So moving on to fungus, unlike animals, they have a cell wall, kind of more like a plant. But they also have organelles. And you can see some fungi are multicellular, like the mushrooms we see in our yards. But some are unicellular, like this baker's yeast that helps us eat bread and pizza. And athlete's foot. foot fungus that makes things like athlete's foot. It's similar to ringworm as well. Moving on to bacteria, they have a cell wall, not a cell membrane, but they do not have organelles. Instead, all of their DNA just kind of moves around all willy-nilly inside the cell. And sure, bacteria gets a bad name because it gives us things like Streptococcus, which is the species of bacteria that makes strep throat, but there can also be some good bacteria too, like this lactobacillus that you find in your yogurt. And a lot of people take probiotics to help actually put bacteria into your body to help you digest your food. And finally, moving on to the little guy we've all heard about for the past year, the virus. So this one's weird. It's one of the tiniest microorganisms we've talked about so far because some people actually refer to it as subatomic because it's difficult to see with most microscopes. You have to actually get a huge microscope that shoots electrons to be able to see something this small. So we've talked about protozoans that have a cell membrane and organelles. We've talked about fungi that have a cell wall and organelles. We've talked about bacteria that have a cell wall but no organelles. Well, this guy doesn't have a cell wall, cell membrane, or organelles. So what is it made of? Well, all of its genomic material, sort of like DNA, is just inside this protein cap called a capsid. So the interesting thing about these guys is they don't move on their own, they don't eat on their own, they don't do anything on their own. They have to invade other cells to be able to reproduce. So they get inside our cells and take it over kind of like a zombie and make our cells reproduce for them. So kind of wackadoodle. And actually, scientists argue whether these organisms are actually alive or not because they don't eat or reproduce on their own. They rely on us to do it. So what do you think? Do you think they're alive? Do you think they're not alive? The good news is that's a career you can choose down the path, and you can help enlighten us all on whether you think viruses are really a living organism or not a living organism. So I know a lot of us in science think it's really nice to have yes or no answers, but sometimes in science the answer is, maybe, or it depends. So here's a couple of examples of viruses. We have the typical flu virus, and the top picture shows you what we see in the scanning electron microscope, and the bottom picture is a computer visualization that was made for scientists to be able to see what it looks like in 3D. And on the right, we have the same thing. We have the scanning electron micrograph on the top. Then on the bottom, we have the computer-generated animation of what scientists think the coronavirus looks like. So on the next slide, I want you guys to tell me, do you think viruses are living organisms or not? And tell me, why do you think so?